Hi, this is Kimile, and you're listening to Heal with Kimile podcast. I want to talk today about who you should trust with your therapy sessions. And if you're not with someone that you feel heard and they can validate you, they understand you, you're maybe with the wrong kind of coach. There's, personalities. People have different needs. I have a different style and I'm a little bit more direct and rigorous with people. But people find it refreshing and they feel like they can be themselves with me. And have you ever had a conversation with someone that they're looking at you, they seem like they're listening, but there just is kind of a disconnect feeling and you just don't want to keep on talking? Well, that's because that person isn't really engaging with you. They're not really processing as you're speaking. And I think it's really critical with who you hire to coach you, that they have the ability to fully understand you and kind of get where you're coming from. And there's an emotional intelligence with it. There's a cerebral intelligence. They're tracking with you. Their intellect is there and they're mature. I think a lot of it is if you've got a seasoned professional who has had thousands and thousands of hours behind the desk, years behind the desk, they typically have a really keen ability to listen. And listening is, I think, the most important part of being a coach or a therapist, because you really want to get that person that you're hearing to drill down and really go to the core of where the pain is, where the real upset is. But if you've got someone who doesn't have that maturity or they haven't done the work on themselves in a way, I'm not saying you have to be perfect to be counseling people. That's not possible. But hypothetical, if a client comes to me and I haven't dealt with dad issues and they're coming in with dad issues, my issues are going to come up. I'm going to not be able to be as present and listen to my client is if I haven't dealt with my own stuff on that subject. So when you are talking to somebody, I think it's really important for you to observe how they're listening to you, how they're responding to you. So when you start sharing your emotion or sharing your concern, are they connected? Do you feel like they heard you? And are they saying things that you can tell they're tracking with you? And this is probably good in general conversation tips as well. Because if you've got someone that you're trying to have a conversation with and it's difficult, you're having a hard time finding the words, or it's not flowing, or you feel a little awkward, and maybe you're slowing down and you're just not feeling like you should say something. It's because you shouldn't. That instinct inside of you is saying maybe this person isn't listening, or they don't care, or they can't hear it. And I think the worst situation is if you're trying to share something that you're going through, or you're trying to get some relief by talking about, and whoever you're talking to has a reaction to that. They're reacting to what you're saying. And if that happens, stop. Just stop talking, because that person's not present with you. They're in their own head. When you, again, hire somebody, they need to be your advocate. They need to be there for you. And I'm not saying agreeing with you all the time, but they need to be able to fully comprehend where you're at. And if you don't feel like you have that, that's because they're not present people. People that are present right here, right now, I always say no case on post. So if I'm with my client, it's not about me. It's never about me. It's about my client. It's about what they're going through. So I'm listening with my whole face. I'm, turned toward them. My eyes are on them. I am listening to everything they're saying. I'm seeing and feeling with them what they're feeling. Like I'm tuned in. I'm attuning literally to my person, to the person I'm with. And I pick up on those subtle, unspoken things, maybe that my client doesn't realize that they're going through. And I'll bring a point home. Well, this is probably why you might have done this, or this is maybe why you feel this way. Yeah, that's because I'm helping them connect the dots for themselves. And then that leaves them with an experience of feeling totally gotten, like she got me. She totally heard me. I feel like she understood me. And that is the moment, like right there, that is the moment when you really, really feel heard. There is some sort of exchange there between, person to person, human to human, counselor to client, whatever you want to call it. But when you feel fully heard and fully gotten, that is when there is like an emotional air moment. And that emotional air moment is that you feel like there's the breakthrough. You transfer maybe your pain over to that person that's listening. That is man, that's therapy. That is what really therapy looks like, because that person just feels better because someone got their experience. They fully can hear that experience. They know how you feel, and they're in the world of it with you. That connection makes you feel like you're not alone, because you're not alone when somebody really fully understands you. And that to me is the number one. Like the number one reason you would talk to anybody about anything in a therapeutic type way is to be understood or to understand yourself better. I mean, that's what it's all about, I would think, right? So if you're in any sort of conversation with people and they're not understanding, or they're reacting, or they're interrupting, or they're critiquing you, or how you say something, like that person's not really tracking with you. They're at a surface level. They aren't going deep with you. And so I wouldn't waste your time trying to get them to understand. If I'm having that kind of a dialogue with anybody, I kind of test people sometimes, and I'll throw something out there that's a little bit deeper. Some people just, bypass it, ignore it. Some people go, hey, that's interesting. That's pretty insightful. And I had this going on. So again, there's some sort of connection there because there's a relation, like that they relate to that. So that usually indicates someone who's gone through something, and they have a maturity about life, about themselves, and they can actually hear gritty or difficult things because they've gone through something difficult. I'll tell you, my favorite people are recovered. They recovered from addiction. They're recovered from an injury. They've gone through something really difficult, and they are on the other side of that. Those people have a level of confront in life. I always say you got to up your confront level. How do you do that? You go through some pain, you go through some suffering, and life is generous. It will life on you. But if you have a high confront for life, those are my favorite people to talk to, Even if they're still bitter and angry that something bad happened to them or whatever, they're still able to have humanity, be a human being with other people. I have a dear friend, a former client, but he was paralyzed on one half of his body. He had a stroke. He had a truck wreck, and then he had a stroke. And to the average person who didn't, probably couldn't get him or would look at him and judge him because he was, atrophied on one half of his body, and he limped and he would fall down sometimes. And I would just, like we'll be walking somewhere and I'm talking. Oh, there he goes. He just fell down. And I'm like, get up. What are you doing? We're trying to draw attention to yourself. I'd actually kind of make fun of him a little bit and he would laugh and laugh. I didn't critique him. I wasn't embarrassed. I didn't get embarrassed about that. That's just what he's going through, But he would be so difficult and almost rude to people that would look at him in a certain way. He'd be offended, But with people that were in a wheelchair, or if they were at the gym and they needed help with something, he was so kind. Like those are the people he really wanted to help. And he did. He was a very helpful, good guy. But I noticed how he would categorize people. And the people that have gone through something like him, he knew that they could relate. And they did relate. They became fast friends. I watch these videos too online, and I see horses, like the royalty horses, and there's these, there's men on the horse, and they're in their uniform, and this is over in Europe. And some people that come and stand and get a picture by the horse bites them. The horse shoves them. It's like, get away from me, except for the people that are physically challenged. And it seems like that horse knows that. And so those people can stand next to him, and the horse is loving and kind. That's what I'm talking about. It's like when you've gone through something in life, you have a totally new perspective, and you're able to hear gritty, difficult things without flinching, without, having a reaction. And those are the people that are my favorite kind of people. I think I'm one of those people. I've gone through my own stuff, and I've listened to thousands and thousands of clients. And my goal, honestly, with listening to clients is not always just to tell them anything. It's really just to get them to share, to really express themselves in a way that they don't normally get to express themselves. Because even sometimes with doctors, if they're going through something medical, the doctor has a job. They're not supposed to just sit there and listen. They've got to tell them what to do or things like that. So some people that have gone through a lot, when they're finally able to just be listened to, my longest session was 9 hours. This girl was on a roll, and she'd gone through so much, and she had a child die, and all this pain. And finally, and it took me a long time to kind of get her in. She'd avoid it. She'd cancel. She wouldn't show up. And so I had the full day, and I just said, we're going to take as long as it takes, because that was her thing. It's I got 50 minutes. And like, no, you're going to have as long as you need. I just took the day with her, and it was 9 hours. I mean, we had lunch and everything, of course, but When she started talking and crying and talking and crying and talking and crying, it was almost like she was just unburdening herself. And yeah, it was around her son's death, but it was also around her divorce and her family and her childhood. I mean, just everything she just started talking about because she finally felt heard. And this is a lifetime of pain that woman had. And she loves me to this day, and I love her too. It's just, when you find someone that can really hear you, there's value in that. That's why people come to me, because I'm gonna hear you, and I'm gonna hear what you're going through, but I'm also gonna tie it together of how you wind up being a certain way in life. And if I don't get you like at a certain level, if I don't really fully recreate you, I call it duplicate you inside of myself. So I'm really looking and listening for what your value is, what your pain was really about. And if I don't fully get that pain moment and kind of pull that out of you, if you don't have like an aha moment and you don't feel like light as a feather when you leave my office, something wasn't shared, something wasn't fully expressed. Well, that's what I call a successful session, is that when you feel like you are totally transformed and your mood is lighter and you feel complete. You feel like you've said it all and you weren't judged and you were listened to 100%. That's valuable. It's really valuable. And so if you're, again, in communication with somebody and they're fidgeting, they're on their phone, they're distracting themselves, they're looking around you, they're not present, don't waste your breath, because you need someone that's going to be fully engaged with you, to listen to your heart. I mean, if it's just social stuff, well, even then, just know that person's not able to be present with you. They're not present with you. You might remind them of somebody, and that's happened to me a handful of times. People come in, and I had a person that really, I couldn't ask questions to, and I figured that out. It's like they'd walk in, hi, Chipper, how you doing? Give me a hug, sit down. And then the second I say, okay, how's it going this week? What's happening? They would just shut right down. And I kind of figured out, it was that I asked the question. They had interrogation their whole childhood with their father. He was a cop. So it's like that red hot spotlight on them. And so any question triggered them to think that they're being interrogated and they're in trouble. So once I figured that out and we talked about it, I said, okay, well, how can I inquire? And say, okay, well, what do you want to talk about? Like, you just tell me what you're going to share. So I just couldn't ask the questions that way, but I had to figure out that was what they were triggered by. And when you're talking to somebody, there's a lot going on. There's the language, you're just chatting away, but it's triggering that person across from you. And if you remind them of someone from their past, if you're talking about a subject that they have pain around, they're in their head about that and not able to hear you. So you want to be looking to see if the person you're speaking to is listening to you. But the minute they quit listening, there's a shift in the energy. So you have to really tap in and see, is this person able to hear me? Now, I'm a snob now about that. I get sessions and I only coach with people that really do have the ability to listen, and at a level of wanting me to be fully self-expressed. They're not going to slow me down or stop me. They're going to want me to be fully self-expressed. I just want to bring this distinction to people because I think it's so critical. And this is why a lot of fights happen, I mean, this is married couples. I'm trying to communicate with you. I'm telling you how I feel. They can't be with it. They can't hear it. Sometimes they think it's their fault that you feel that way. And so that's, you're critiquing them or something. But if we don't slow down, like really slow down how we're speaking, and we don't process or learn to process with each other what's happening over in my head, what's happening over in your head, well, what does that make me feel like? If we don't process with each other, we're just barking at each other. We're just talking at each other. There's no real communication that's taking place. And I find that in a lot of my couple clients, when they come in, they have fought the same fight for years. And I say, is this routine? Has this happened before? You guys fought? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I say, okay, well, let's go about it a little differently. And I make them slow down. And I say, okay, talk about the last fight you had. Give me the play-by-play. Well, she has a tone. There's a tone with me. Okay. And the tone means, because if someone's angry, they're going to have a tone. They're going to have this mood. Oh, yeah. So the tone comes out, right? And the tone is like, that tone is a world for that guy, right? She has a tone with me. Okay, well, give me the tone. Like, who had a tone? What happens when someone has a tone? And basically it was that his mother would have a tone and she'd be angry. So the tone indicates there's an angry emotion, that someone's mad at me and I'm going to get it. I'm going to be in trouble. And so it was like that trigger, and he was now on red alert. There's that tone. Here it comes. Whatever it is. Well, for him, it was being locked in his room for days. It was the cold shoulder. It was no food. It was abandonment is what it was. It was isolation, confinement is what it was. So this is where he went through some major trauma with his mother. And so if his wife has something she needs to bring up and she's upset or she's getting animated or she's a woman, she's going to be expressive, she's going to have feelings. That's normal. But if that starts coming up for her and she has a tone, he shuts down. They do not and cannot communicate because now he's in the world of, she's going to hurt me like my mom. See, who does the wife remind him of when she gets angry? Mom. And so he treats her like mom. And he's defiant and he's jabby and he's rude. And she's like, I'm just trying to have a conversation with you about my feelings. He can't be with it. He can't handle it. So once I helped him figure out and realize that the minute he experiences a tone coming at him, he turns into that 7, 10-year-old little boy. And now he responds to her like a little boy. So we have to slow that down, though. And I actually mock it up with them. I have her throw the tone at him. Now, what happened over there? So we process how he received that tone from his wife, where he goes with it in his head. And he can see that he's got this mother wound that is in the way of him being able to be a husband to his wife and hear her concerns. Everyone's got concerns in a relationship. And if you don't have concerns and you're not bringing them up, you're not communicating. So how do you handle difficult conversations? But if you've got a prior wound that you've not worked through, you can't listen. You stop listening at that point, you get triggered. When people are triggered, they can't hear in the moment. They're not in the moment. And I know that. So when I'm working with someone and they start getting upset, okay, what's going on over there? And I have to stop my communication to process them and see what's coming up. What are they being reminded of? What do they think is happening again? Because that's what a trigger is. It's like, oh, here we go again. Something from my past is resurfaced, and I'm going to superimpose that memory on you, and you now become the past person that hurt me. So that memory is superimposed on the present time moment, and that person is literally in their head, seeing the past, living the past, speaking the past, feeling from the past. But if you don't know that, I work with a lot of professional counselors even that come to see me, and they haven't been trained in some of this stuff. I'm like, if you guys don't know this, and I do think it takes time to kind of sort it out, but you got to know that about your client. If your client's upset, they're triggered. So you got to untrigger them or it doesn't go well from that point on. Communication is going to go south. And what is counseling if it's not communication? So if you're with someone and you're trying to have a conversation and they're triggered, and now you got to stop sharing what you're sharing to make sure they're okay, or you have to reassure them or start talking about their pain, that person is maybe just immature. They just don't have the maturity or they haven't done the work to stay present with you when you're sharing what you're sharing. So if that's the case, you need to stop sharing and unfortunately probably try and process them. But you also need to help them see that the trigger is taking them out of being able to hold space for you. A lot of people are like this. They just can't hear it. They can hear it for a moment, but then they trigger. I've got a husband I'm thinking of right now. He hears a wife complaint and he feels like, I'm never good enough. I can't give her enough. I can't do enough. I can't work hard enough. Does she not realize? So he hears it as a critique instead of, look, I'm just sharing what I'm fearful about. I'm just sharing what I'm looking at in the future. And so once he recognized that he doesn't have to take it personal, I said, look, you want to be a bucket, like just let her pour herself into you. Women get flooded with emotion. We get flooded. And so when we're flooded with emotion, we need to kind of have someone to kind of just, listen, just hear me, that's just becoming a bucket. So when I said, look, be the bucket, if she needs you to fix it, she'll tell you. But most women, most people sometimes just need to be pouring themselves into that bucket energy. And so you want to hold space for them to be able to share. And I also have couples take notes. And so, if let's just say you're listening to your spouse or your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, and they're frustrated, their concerns or whatever, and you get triggered, try to stay in the moment, write down your trigger, because that's something you do want to process later so that you don't continue to get triggered when they share their stuff. Because again, you're not going to fully hear people. If you can't fully hear people, they don't fully get better. Emotional air happens when they're fully heard. So just keep that in mind. And again, I wouldn't waste money on people that can't hear you. If they aren't listening and they don't recreate you and help you see that they fully comprehend you. And then they can give you some advice. They may have some, tips or whatever, but it really matters that the person you're sharing your story and your pain with can handle your pain. They can help you through it. They're not triggered by it. And some people are naturally more inclined to be able to do this than not. But again, if you're hiring a professional, make sure they have the capacity to stay present with you. They're in the moment with you, and they fully, fully get you, all of you. You'll know that. You'll feel better, when you talk to someone like that. That's really what I think therapy is all about. So listening is critical. Listening is really, I think, the secret sauce in the dynamic when you're sharing with somebody. And what was that quote? People may not remember what you say to them, but they remember how you made them feel, right? And when people are inquisitive and curious about other people and they want to say, tell me more, and well, tell me what happened. When you actually start asking questions because tell me more about that, about you, people will feel like they're safe to share everything. But that's where I think magic happens inside of a relationship. And by the way, in the beginning of all love relationships, it's like that. We don't judge each other. We're like, wow, tell me all about that. Wow. And so you feel really, really heard in the beginning of a relationship. And that feels like love because you are experiencing love. Love, to me, the action of love is acceptance. And so when you can accept somebody with their story and their pain, and you accept how they feel, you're not condemning or judging or critiquing. Because that isn't my job to judge, critique, or condemn anybody. My job is to hear you. That's my job, to hear you. And in the hearing of you, that's what heals you. So when you're seeking counsel or seeking someone to listen to you, make sure they can listen and they're present with you. I hope this helps. I got a lot of people that have come to me from other counselors and stuff. And that's what they say is that they feel like they got it all out with me. And they feel like it kind of got transferred and they're lighter because of it. They got heard. Thank you for listening. And if any of this helps you and you'd like to make an appointment with me, you can find me on my website. It's healwithkimile.com, HEAL with KIMILE.com. Thanks for listening. Bye.